2025, what a year, right? Starting right out the bat in January, it's been crazy. We saw where there was an executive order for federal workers to come back into the office. Now, how does that affect you and I as enrolled agents? It means that IRS employees were no longer allowed to work from home. Since COVID, prior to COVID, people have adjusted their schedules, their budgets, living arrangements based on the ability to do certain work remotely and not in the office. So we knew that we were going to feel some of the side effects from that. But soon after, we see that federal employees are offered a buyout, which we know is severance pay. Again, seeing into the future, we had IRS employees that wanted to take that deal. Then the government turns around and says, hey, but if you're an IRS employee, you can't do that until after tax season. The following week, they announced that 6,700 IRS employees are going to be laid off. Now, I'm smiling because I'm a happy person. I like to smile. But what I just described is complete and utter chaos. And it may have you wondering about the career path that you've chosen or that you're on the fence about pursuing. And that is why in this video, I want to address the question, is being an enrolled agent even worth it anymore in 2025? My honest to God answer is yes. This is the perfect time for you to be an enrolled agent. But before I get into my why, just in case you're new here, my name is Timalyn Bowens and I'm America's favorite EA. I'm also the owner of Bowens Tax Solutions, which is a virtual firm that has a focus in helping taxpayers who owe the IRS six figures or more negotiate with the IRS. Now, with that being said, I've experienced firsthand what it's like trying to get through to the IRS. On one hand, some days it's easy to get through, and you have IRS employees that are ready to do the work because they're on eggshells, worried about whether or not they're meeting the new standards, that are being set, and they're going to keep their job. Then on the other hand, you have people who aren't very motivated because they don't want to start something that they can't finish, and they're sitting on eggshells because they're just waiting for their pink slip. What happens when the IRS is underfunded means that the IRS agents and officers are going to be overworked. We've been through a time just recently where the IRS has been extremely underfunded and understaffed. Now, under the American Rescue Plan, they were to receive a lot of funding. They were authorized to hire over, I don't want to say the wrong number now, a lot of employees over a 10-year span. But what you need to understand is that we already had about 30% of those people that were able to retire over the next 1 to 6 years. So people were on the way out anyway. Okay. So when we look at that, we have people leaving. A lot of people were just going to be replaced. Then we're also looking at technology updates that have taken place since COVID. So I was speaking with a client and they said, it takes about 3 good years to actually learn a position and be good in your job. Or if you're just starting a business, it takes about 3 years to really get the reins in and know what you're doing. The same applies over at the IRS. Why am I explaining this? Because for you, if you want to become an enrolled agent, right now is the perfect time if you have the passion and the grit to represent taxpayers before the IRS. If you're not familiar with the enrolled agent designation, but you've seen it pop up as a potential career path for you, let me fill you in. The EA designation is the highest license that the IRS awards to a tax professional. Enrolled agents are only one of 3 licensed professionals who can represent taxpayers before the IRS. If you're not familiar with what that is, That means that you stand in the gap for taxpayers when they have an IRS issue and you advocate on their behalf. Okay. So taxpayers are allowed to sign a 2848, which is a tax matters power of attorney for you to be their representative. This is what it looks like in my firm. People hire Bowens Tax Solutions to stand in the gap for them when it comes to owing the IRS $100,000 or more. We negotiate payment terms. We see what penalties we can get removed and forgiven. If somebody is facing an audit, Bowens Tax Solutions is hired to go in and get the information that the IRS needs. We are responsible for telling the taxpayers' financial story and what really happened and making sure that the taxpayers' rights are protected and not trampled by the IRS. Now, don't get me wrong, they have a job to do, but the IRS is comprised of human beings, just like me, just like you. I don't know about you, but I've made plenty of mistakes, and sometimes I need a second set of eyes. Same thing with the IRS. With them implementing different technology, some things are computer generated. And now, in this phase where we have people going out, and even the people that are in, maybe they don't understand how their new technology works. So that leaves room for an ample amount of mistakes to be made. Taxpayers aren't going to know enough about their situation to represent themselves. Think about it. If you committed a crime, one of the worst things that you can do is represent yourself in the court of law. Sometimes that also applies to taxpayer situations. They need an expert who understands the tax law better than they do. They need an expert who will make sure that their financial situation is explained and heard, and that any payment arrangement that's set up will satisfy the IRS and not bankrupt them. If you're on the fence about being an enrolled agent, listen. This is the perfect time, because with an overworked and understaffed agency, that means the ones remaining are going to be even more overworked, right? So we need somebody who on the first phone call knows what they need to ask for. They need to know what to advocate and get the job done. Check this out. The Department of Government Efficiency, also known as DOGE, has gone in and said, hey, here are some areas where we can cut spending. Over 100 IRS offices across the nation will be closing. 100 offices that have taxpayer assistance. That means the IRS, with all of the technology updates, is going to be even less accessible to your everyday taxpayer. If you have the passion and you have the grit to stand in that gap for them and represent them, it is for such a time as this. It is the best time for you to become an enrolled agent, if you ask me again, in my honest, humble opinion, because there are taxpayers out there that need you. Okay. Now, your path to get there may be different, and maybe you have questions now. Make sure that you drop the questions down below, but I also want you to head on over to my website at americasfavoriteea.com, because I want you to join my mailing list, because I'm going to have even more information to help you learn how to become an EA if you're not. And if you're interested in starting a firm or learning different ways that you can advocate for taxpayers right now, you need to be on that email list to make sure that you don't miss out. Again, the link is down below, but you can find it at www.americasfavoriteea.com. I'll talk to you soon.